UFC Fight Night 187, aka UFC Vegas 21. We have Leon Edwards versus Bilal Muhammad. Definitely, we got to big up Bilal Muhammad right away for stepping up in this fight. We know that this fight was originally supposed to be Leon Edwards versus Khamzat Chimaev, but of course, COVID stopped that from happening. And Bilal put his name in the hat shortly after his win last month. So definitely big up to him for that. And a big up to us. I mean, boxing MMA picks. I go by the name of Harris. He goes by the name of Zan. And we are here to give you our UFC breakdown, UFC fight prediction. We're here to let you know which fights are worth the value, which underdog picks you can perhaps take a look at, which fights are maybe overvalued. And hey, you never know. We might give you a little parlay pick at the end of the video as well. This is a very tough card, UFC Fight Night 187. You're definitely going to want to pay attention and stay until the end of this video to hear the full commentary on each of the fights. Now, as usual, we're going to have to start with our prelims. We got 6 fights on the prelims. We have 7 fights on the main card. So let's get right into it. Fight number 1 of our prelims. We have Matthew Semelsberger versus Jason Witt. When I take a look at this fight, I mean, what I'm going to say is, in my opinion at least, this fight strictly is going to come down to whether Matthew Semelsberger can stop the takedown or not, right? I mean, when I look at Matthew Semelsberger, he's had a good showing in his debut versus Carlton Minus. One thing that concerned me a bit was I was listening to the commentators and they mentioned that Matthew Semelsberger said that he prefers entertaining over winning. So that could be a problem. Definitely, pay attention to that. But otherwise, I mean, if we're talking about his skill, decent stand-up, solid kickboxing. I like his hands, especially. I notice when strikers go to the body, it really shows you a high level of IQ when it comes to the striking. Good combinations as well. I mean, he picks his shots. I like his combinations with the hands. I like the striking defense. I think he, throws the kicks in there pretty well as well. And he puts the pressure on, right? So I do expect him to be coming forward in this fight. But with Jason Witt, I mean, like I said, I mean, he's going to be somebody that's going to want to try to take this fight to the ground. He's going to be somebody that kind of goes to his wrestling right away. And he's also a BJJ brown belt, right? So, I mean, he has that sort of wrestling grappling combo that can be really overwhelming for some people if they just don't really have that ability to keep up with him like we saw in his fight versus Cole Williams. His stand-up, not quite the best, in my opinion. I think he will show some decent movement around the ring. He's going to show a switch stance, from time to time, especially shooting for a takedown as well. He's going to throw some kicks in there again. And I mean, the punches, they kind of come in looping. So you might want to be careful about that. Like I said, it's going to come down to whether or not Semelsberger can stop the takedown. I think he's shown me some takedown defense. Obviously, don't pay too much attention to his 100% takedown defense here because it's a very small sample size. But I mean, I don't know how he's going to fare against somebody like Witt, right? So with these low-level fighters, there's sometimes a lot of question marks in terms of, who's at what level. That said, I do expect Matthew Semelsberger just to be the better fighter in this fight. I think he has more tools to win. I think he's shown me some takedown defense. And at minus 130, I'm really liking the value here. Although I will say Jason Witt, he does have a legitimate path. How do you feel about this one?
Yeah, this is a hard fight for me because I'm echoing your points. Semelsberger, I believe, has the better stand-up. Witt has more of a wild stand-up, but he definitely has power to put Semelsberger down. When it comes to the wrestling, Witt is pretty determined. He goes right in. He has a good double leg, and he gets these fights to the ground. He gets the fight messy, and but there's that edge in the stand-up that I'm giving Semelsberger. Now, one thing that is in Witt's favor is that he has 24 MMA fights versus Semelsberger, who has just fought 9 times professionally. And one of those fights in 2018, October 6th, he lost by KO in the 3rd round to a fighter that was 0-0, Jourdain Featherstone. So there's concerns with Semelsberger's competition, obviously. But Witt's 34. Me personally, I will not bet this fight. But to make a pick on the channel, I'll take Semelsberger. I think that he's going to keep this on the feet enough. Obviously, if this goes to the ground, it's going to favor Witt. But Semelsberger, he did wrestling before he did football, and then he did he did football, then he did wrestling, and then he did MMA right after. So he has a bit of wrestling. He doesn't have the best wrestling, but he has trained wrestling, whether it be collegiate, whether it be high school, I believe, or collegiate, I'm not sure. But he has trained wrestling. I was reading an interview with this guy. So, but obviously he mentioned as well, his wrestling's not the best, but he's always training it. So I'm hoping that he can keep this on the feet. Witt does not have the best wrestling, but he does have legit MMA wrestling. So I'm hoping he keeps it on the feet and tags up Witt here. And Witt may have cardio issues as the fight goes on if he wants to portray a heavy grappling attack. So I'm going to go with Semelsberger, surviving the wrestling, keeping on the feet. I think he has an advantage on the feet, and I think he can hurt Witt here.
All right, fight number 2. Let's move on to Gloria de Paula versus Jinh Frey. Jinh Frey, she's 0-2 in the UFC. She's a southpaw. On paper, she's not too bad, right? Of a pretty half-decent skill set on paper. She can play the clinch game on the cage, like we saw in her fight versus Loma Lubunme. And she also showed some takedown ability in that fight as well. Just her clinch overall. I mean, she can really, grind you up against the cage and kind of find points through that method there. Decent left hand. We saw her having some moments on the feet versus Kate Henson. And I've seen, again, like I said, some decent takedown defense from her, even in the Kate Henson fight, although Henson was eventually able to get her down to the ground halfway through the second. And in terms of just in the stand-up, she's more likely to kind of control the center of the octagon. So that could look good in some of the eyes, some of the judges' eyes, I should say. But, I mean, in general, she just doesn't really do too much, right? She doesn't really offer me anything. I don't think she's the most active striker. I don't think she's going to sort of wow you or really put the pressure on you. I mean, we see, in again, 2 UFC fights, 1.90 strikes landed per minute. That's just not going to get it done, in my opinion. When I look at Gloria de Paula, I mean, it is her UFC debut, so of course you always want to be aware of that. She did have a fight, if I'm not mistaken, on the Dana White Contender Series. Showed me some pretty decent grappling ability in that fight. Otherwise, I mean, her striking looks pretty sharp. I mean, she has that Muay Thai style. She has a pretty good Thai clinch, pretty controlling clinch against the cage. Outside of this being a debut for Gloria de Paula, I do think there's a bit more reasons to like her in this fight. Jinh Frey, she's kind of one of those fighters. I mean, she kind of reminds me of almost like a Tyson Nam type of fighter, in that I don't feel they maybe particularly belong in the UFC. Even though the skill set might be decent on paper, it's kind of easy to create a bad matchup for them, either by having better striking, which I think is the case here, or whether it means having a better ground game if your striking isn't the best. With de Paula, I mean, I think she has really good hands. What concerns me about de Paula, though, is how easy it is to take her down. If Jinh Frey comes in with a game plan, that could be an approach for her, but that's not a strong suit of Jinh Frey. So that being said, I do think this fight stays on the feet for the most part, at least for 2 of the rounds. I do think de Paula has the better hands. I do think she has some UFC experience with the Dana White Contender Series win, and I like the value here. I mean, minus 170. Always want to be careful with a fighter making their debut, but a lot of reasons to like Gloria de Paula in this one, in my opinion.
Okay, that's a fair pick. Can you click on any one of these fighters so I can see their record?
Let's take a look at Jinh Frey.
She's obviously been in Invicta before. She's a more experienced fighter. And she's fought a lot of big names in Invicta. So she's already has dealt with good competition versus her opponent this weekend hasn't really fought anyone worthwhile. On the Contender Series, she definitely won that fight. But Pauline Macias is a terrible fighter. She's supposed to be a grappler who couldn't get any grappling going, and she had no striking. She was a terrible low-level fighter. It was an easy win. But I think this is going to be a tougher fight. I think this fight is actually close. I think Jinh Frey has some value because she has the experience and her striking is her strong suit. I think technically she will have the better striking. However, Gloria is way more active. Now, I'm going to take Gloria in this fight. However, I am not betting this fight. I believe this is a closer fight than the odds say, because you have to factor in Gloria has not beaten anyone good. And all of her opponents that she's fought are low-level fighters that have fought 2 or 3 times, or she fought a fighter that was 6-1, but she lost that fight, right? So whenever she steps up, she loses. So she's fighting a fighter with a winning record, with experience. So Jinh Frey is definitely a live dog, but I'm going to go with Gloria because I think she's more active. When it comes to women's fighting, it's really hard to predict. It's hard to see who's taking it more serious because they really switch up each fight. They look different completely from fight to fight. But I'm going to hope and bank on Gloria being the younger fighter, the better cardio, the more activity. Even if she loses the first round, Jinh Frey has cardio issues, and at that point, her activity levels are gonna lower down. So even though I think Jinh Frey has the better skills, I believe that Gloria has that cardio advantage, and I believe that if second, third round, this likely goes decision, she has a better chance at winning that decision. So I'm going to go Gloria de Paula.
Yeah, sounds good. I think we're kind of in agreement there. She's green, right? And that's always going to create question marks. So be aware of that. Really pay attention to what's going on in that fight. Jinh Frey could be presenting some value there at plus 145. I just don't think she gets it done. Let's move on to fight number 3. In that case, we have Jonathan Martinez versus Davey Grant. Jonathan Martinez, I mean, he looked really good in his last fight. That was against Thomas Almeida. And obviously, that was a big deal for him. Although it was the return of Almeida after quite some time off, that's still a win versus a name that at one point, he was seen as a potential title contender, right? He was kind of that young prospect that a lot of people were looking at. Jonathan Martinez himself, he's a southpaw, really good striker, good sound boxing, good movement, good kicks as well. He's a pretty complete striker, right? A lot to like about his game, a pretty dynamic striker as well. And I like the way that he controls the octagon. I like his pressure. It feels patient. It feels constant. It feels active. It's good, right? I mean, and he showed me some good takedown defense as well, although only 61% takedown defense in terms of statistics. He did show me some decent takedown defense versus a wrestler first type of fighter if you watch his fight versus Frankie Science. And with Davey Grant, I mean, it's not really going to matter. Well, it might matter a bit, but Davey Grant, I mean, he kind of likes to stand up as well, switch stance, a lot of calf kicks, a lot of movement. He stays real light on his feet. But with somebody like Davey Grant, he's going to have pretty decent takedowns, right? Pretty good takedowns, landing almost a takedown per round. If you look at the statistics there, he's a solid grappler, right? What's interesting is that he is only a purple belt, but he has that grappling advantage over his opponents, quite often. I think this one's interesting because size could play a factor here. This one is at bantamweight, and we've seen. I think Martinez is going to be the physically stronger fighter, right? We've seen him compete, of course, at bantamweight. We've seen him compete at 155 as well, if I'm not mistaken. Whereas Davey Grant competed at 135. So I'm wondering how much size is going to play a factor in this fight, especially with somebody like Davey Grant who's going to look to try to take you down, especially with someone like Jonathan Martinez who has some decent takedown defense. It could play a factor. Again, it was only that one fight versus Thomas Almeida that was at 145. But basically where I'm going with this is that I do think the UFC gave him one here. I do think they gave Jonathan Martinez one here. I think he's the better fighter than Davey Grant. I think the advantage that Davey Grant could have with the ground game, I don't think is going to be a weapon here. I think this is going to stay on the feet, and I'm looking for Jonathan Martinez to be the sharper puncher of the two. So I'm going with Jonathan Martinez on this. I will say I don't like these odds at all. So just be very careful in terms of how many tickets you're putting this one on.
Yeah, no, I really like Jonathan Martinez in this spot. Davey Grant definitely has the grappling advantage in this fight. He gets 50% of his takedowns. He's not gonna be able to do this consistently for 3 rounds. Martinez is gonna piece him up on the feet. He's a cleaner striker. He reads his opponent. After that Andre Ewell fight that a lot of people think he won, he's looked really good. Like he looked good in that fight as well. But he's looked good in pretty much every one of his fights. So in this fight, I think he's gonna be the far better striker, the better MMA fighter. He's gonna be able to keep it on the feet. He has really good training partners. And yeah, I'm gonna go with Jonathan Martinez here in a comfortable decision here. He might finish him, but I'm gonna say let's say decision.
Yeah, and a sneak peek to the end of the video, I probably have him on some parlay play. So yeah, Jonathan Martinez, good pick on that. Fight number 4, probably a harder fight. We have Charles Jourdain versus Marcelo Rojo. How do you feel about this one?
Yeah, I think this is a really tough fight because when you really look at the way Rojo fights, I know it's his first fight in the UFC. He was supposed to fight Rani Barcelo, so I guess he was supposed to come in and take an L because there's no way he's beating Barcelos. He's a beast, but this guy's a tough fighter. He has finishes. He finishes people. He can knock you out. He has good jiu-jitsu. He can put you in an armbar. He can put you in a guillotine. This guy can finish fights. However, he's been finished himself 4 times. Yeah, 4 times, I believe. So he's going to be fighting a guy in Charles Jourdain that has that power, that has a striking advantage, should be quicker. But I think when it comes to the ground game, Marcelo Rojo, I believe, is the better grappler. So if Marcelo Rojo goes out there and grapples, I see a good underdog here winning. But it's his first fight in the UFC. A lot of people in their first fight don't show out in their first fight. Charles Jourdain has decent, not the best, but he can avoid some takedowns. And I think that he has that power. He's arguably the more explosive fighter in this fight, arguably the harder hitter. So I'm going to bank on Charles Jourdain getting him out of there. So I'm going to go with Charles Jourdain. But however, I think Marcelo Rojo is a live dog. I looked at his fights. He comes to fight. He can strike. He can grapple. Even if he's hurt, he has heart. I've seen this guy in really compromised situations and just come back and finish the other guy. And he loves that tie. What is that called? That tie clinch. He loves it, and he's good with it. So he can strike too. And he has power, so he can win this fight. But I have to make a pick. I'm not going to make any bet on this fight because I don't like the odds. I like Charles Jourdain to win this fight, but I think Rojo is a complete fighter that could pull this upset off. So be careful, in my opinion, with this fight.
Yeah, a dog win wouldn't surprise me at all on this one. I would say that I quote unquote expect Jourdain to win. And I mean, you got to hope that Jourdain feels like he needs a win here, right? I mean, his last fight was a draw, and his fight before that was, of course, a very interesting loss to Andre Fili. That was a close fight, although hard to say who exactly won that one. But either way, coming off of a loss followed by a draw, we saw the UFC make some cuts recently, right? So someone like Jourdain, you're 25 years old, you're facing on a newcomer. You take a L there, that could really set you back. So you gotta think that Jourdain feels like he needs to win on this one. And again, this is one of those fights where size could play a factor, where most of Jourdain's fights, again, have happened at 145, if not 155. Whereas again, with Rojo, similar style fighter in some ways, just 10 pounds less. So again, I think this is one of those situations where size could play a factor. And again, I'm going to bank on Jourdain feeling like he potentially needs to win here. So I'm also going Jourdain, but to your point, the dog is potentially live on this one. This is probably one of those fights that I want to see what the weigh-in looks like before making a decision on this. In that case, fight number 5, let's talk about Rani Yahya versus Ray Rodriguez. Talk me through this one. Do you feel the same way about Jourdain in terms of really bad odds?
I really do, because if you watch Ray Rodriguez's fight versus Jimmy Flick, and Jimmy Flick is I don't believe he's not on the same level with Rani Yahya in the grappling, but Jimmy Flick is really slick with the grappling, and this guy was able to keep it on the feet, and he was nasty when he had the striking advantage. In this fight versus Yahya, he has the striking advantage, and he can knock out Yahya. Yahya is 36 or so years old. He's getting up there with age. He's had a lot of wars in the UFC. He's a slower fighter. One of the best in jiu-jitsu, pure jiu-jitsu. He's one of the best in the UFC. I'm going to go with Rani Yahya. I'm saying his name wrong probably, but I'm going to go with Rani Yahya. I think that what should happen, he should be able to get this fight to the mat. And every time he gets it to the mat, I don't think Rodriguez will be able to get up. He either is going to finish him or he's going to hold it. And one thing about Yahya, he can do this for 3 rounds if he's fighting someone that doesn't have the best takedown defense. And Ray Rodriguez, I don't believe, has the best takedown defense. And Yahya is coming with single legs, so he's not really shooting in. He's pretty much getting in tight, getting a single leg, and he gets you to the ground. So it's really hard to defend those takedowns when you're that technical and you can get in that close. Because all you got to do is pull the single leg, and he's really good at pulling it, and he gets you on the mat. So in this fight, I see that single leg there all day. All he needs is one each round. He might just need one to finish the fight. So I'm going to go with Rani Yahya, but I think this is a dangerous fight. This is another fight, Harris. I'm not going to put on my parlays because I really think that Ray Rodriguez is a serious threat in this match, because all he has to do is he has to train to avoid the ground, and his stand-up will hurt Yahya. So there's a way for this guy to win the fight. There's a big path for him to win this fight. But I'm going to go bank on Yahya one last time. He's 36. His ground game should be on a different level. If he goes to the mat, if you picked him, you should feel comfortable at that point in the fight. So I'm going to go Rani to win this fight. Who do you got?
Yeah, I also got Rani as well. I mean, Ricky Simón showed a little bit of a blueprint in terms of how to beat a Rani Yahya type of fighter. Obviously, I'm not comparing Ray Rodriguez to Ricky Simón, but, to your point, if he can win the stand-up and, stuff the takedowns, but that is a big if, right? The thing with Rani Yahya is that, he'll shoot for the takedown, but landing the takedown might not be his objective, right? I mean, he's somebody that can shoot for it, grab a leg, try to heel hook you, get you on the ground, scramble, now he's on top of you. Or, shoot for the takedown and then pull guard. And now all of a sudden you're on the ground engaging with him in a grappling match. So, he does have some sort of creative ways to approach a takedown situation or a ground game situation, I should say. And the thing with Rodriguez is that, from what I've seen, to your point, doesn't have the best takedown defense whatsoever. And his stand-up style, to me, although he is the better striker, it's not as dominating. It can be effective, but it's not a dominating style of stand-up that's really gonna, either push Rani Yahya back or stop him from kind of coming forward. Because let's not forget, Rani Yahya, I mean, he does have, a Muay Thai black belt as well, if I'm not mistaken. It might not be more of the combat type of Muay Thai, but that still speaks to some stand-up ability that he has. So we're not going to completely take that one away from him. Again, Yahya, to me, just not worth the odds at all. I can't depend on that type of style. I can't depend on a fighter that's up there in age for a fight that's at minus 310. If he was minus 170, I'd be all over this. But at minus 310, I'd have to say you probably want to stay away completely just from a betting perspective. But of course, Boxing MMA Picks, we're also here to make the pick. And Rani Yahya is also my pick for this fight. Let's move on to fight number 6. In that case, we have 2 canceled fights there. So we're going to get on to fight number 6. And this is actually the final fight of the prelims. We have Cortney Casey versus J.J. Aldrich. I don't like this one at all. I mean, I look at Cortney Casey. I see some decent boxing out of her. I see some decent striking. Her record actually is completely misleading. I want to pull it up here because we see a record at 9-8, and you might think, oh boy, she's not really up there at all. But when you take a look at who she's faced, I mean, from Robertson to Calvillo to Angela Hill, who she beat, Watterson, Herrig, Claudia Gadeja, Branda Marcos. She's Joanne Calderwood. She's faced really high level of competition for years. And you know what? She has a 500 record as a result of it. That could be good, that could be bad. But what that does tell you is that she has the ability to compete, right? She has the ability to compete. She has decent striking, like I said. She doesn't have the best takedown defense. We've seen the defense look okay versus fighters like Mara Borella, whereas fighters like Jillian Robertson, I mean, it's almost like her takedown defense was non-existent. Although on the ground, she does like to look for that armbar off of her back. She has two of those to her name. She's a BJJ brown belt, so she does have some knowledge down there. Should it get down there? As for JJ Aldrich, southpaw, she'll fight from the outside, half decent movement. She's not afraid to engage whatsoever. She'll eat a shot to give a shot. She has a lot of toughness. She's one of those people that'll make the fight kind of messy and really look to engage. I do expect, and she actually has a decent straight left as well that can really find its way. It has a little bit of meat behind it, so you got to really be careful and not get hit by that one. I expect Cortney Casey to have the better stand-up in this one, at least the better boxing. I do see this fight being primarily a boxing match, so in addition to just staying on the feet, I do think it'll be primarily hands as opposed to a lot of feet. And again, like I said, I expect Casey to have the better stand-up, the better boxing. It's hard to say though. This one is hard to say because it's two fighters and two types of maybe fighting styles that I don't like ever picking. So I'm gonna make a reluctant pick here. I'm going with the underdog. I'm going Cortney Casey. I do think although JJ Aldrich could potentially make it a little rougher, I look for Cortney Casey to have the slightly better stand up and just slightly pull this one out.
Yeah, it's a tough fight. I'm personally, I don't know if you know yet. I really don't do a lot of betting with the female fights. I think that a lot of changes happen between these fights with these fighters. Look at Sabino Mazo, her last fight. You know what I'm saying? So in this fight, I'll be quick. I'll be real quick. I'm going JJ Aldrich. Even though Casey might have the more activity with the stand-up, I think that Aldrich has the cleaner work. I think she'll have the cleaner shots, the more powerful shots. Like you highlighted that left. I love that left. I think she has the best left in all female weight classes. I don't think any female has a better left than Aldrich. So maybe Nunes, but I'm going Aldrich. I'm going to take Aldrich to win this fight. I think she has the better stand up here overall when it comes to the power, when it comes to that left. And yeah, I'm going to take her to win this fight here. I think that that Sabino Mazo fight was close. She beat Lauren Mueller. She was outclassed by Macy Barber, but she was winning that fight before she got finished. Polly Viana, Danielle Taylor. Yeah, I like her in the spot. So I'm going to go with JJ Aldrich here. 8-4 versus 9-8. Yeah, I'll take Aldrich on this one.
Sounds good. Let's take it to Vegas then in that case. Let's talk strictly prelims for now. Who would you say? I mean, there are some underdog opportunities that we spoke about. Who would maybe be, not to say your underdog of the prelim, but which underdog would you perhaps be willing to bet on the prelims?
Well, the underdog wise, Jason Witt. I think he's an underdog, right?
Yep, plus 110.
I think he has a solid path here out of all these underdogs here. I went with Semelsberger, but I'm reluctant. He only had 9 fights versus a guy with 24 fights. So Jason Witt is a strong underdog play that I might be looking at. So
okay. My one underdog pick in that case is going to be Cortney Casey. Again, I do agree with you. I think Aldrich has the more effective stand-up, the stand-up that could win. But I think Cortney Casey technically has the better stand-up. So let's see what happens in that one. And she's really going to find herself in a winnable fight for her. So let's see if she can get that one done. And in terms of the prelims, do you have 2 slightly stronger picks that you can go with? I got Jonathan Martinez, and this one's a bit of a gamble, but I will still mention it. Gloria to Paula. Jonathan Martinez plus Gloria to Paula. That's going to equate to a plus 106. $100 will get you 206 on that one. $250 bet will return 516. Do you have two, or do you want to wait for the main card?
You know, I always got something. So for me, when it comes to the early card, I'll make a small bet. And the bet I'm going to make on the small card is Jonathan Martinez and Rani Yahya. Because even though I said all that about Rani and he's getting older, he has a big advantage. There's a good chance this fight goes to the mat. So Rani and Jonathan Martinez are my parlay for the prelims.
Sounds good. So $100 will return 173 on there. $250 will return 433. And one thing we talk about often here on Boxing MMA Picks, it really is about the win. Don't get turned off by a payout, because if you're telling me $250 is going to return 433 on two fighters with big advantages, I mean, that sounds like a pretty decent early play for me, which I would then potentially use those winnings to flip onto the main card. So definitely some value there, some value on the undercard. Boxing MMA Picks, you guys already know what to do. Please help us with all that algorithmic stuff. Comment, subscribe, rate, share with everyone that you know. Let's have that conversation. Let's have the conversation in the comments. Who is your underdog pick of the prelims? Which one or two fights are you confident in the prelims? Are there any of our picks that you guys disagree with? How do you guys feel about Cortney Cases versus JJ Aldrich? Close one. Are you going to go with Casey? Are you going with Aldrich? Let us know in the comments. Let's have some good conversation beside that one. Otherwise, we're going to move on to the main card, man. UFC Fight Night 187, aka UFC Vegas 21. Edwards versus Muhammad. Prelims videos are done. I go by the name of Harris. He goes by the name of Zan. We are Boxing MMA Picks. Let's get this money.
Let's do it.